problem.
All right, hello and a very warm welcome to She the People in our ongoing series Invest Her in partnership with BSC Investors Protection Fund. We talk about personal finance, bring more clarity on important financial concepts, and help women be independent decision makers when it comes to matters of money. And as always, I'm very pleased to welcome Kiran Telang, a certified financial planner registered as an investment advisor with SEBI. हमने आपको पहले भी बताया है कि हम जब भी किरण से मिलते हैं हमारे पास ढेरों सवाल होते हैं उनके लिए और किरण बहुत ही पेशेंटली उनको आंसर करती हैं. And let me tell you that she works with clients across India and overseas, and she helps them make smart investment decisions. So thank you for joining us, Kiran. As always, it's such a pleasure to see you. और आज हम बात कर रहे हैं asset allocation के बारे में. तो चलें आपसे शुरुआत करते हैं with your presentation, and then we will have questions.
Thank you so much, Mugdha. As always, very happy to be here. And let's talk about asset allocation today. Can I have the presentation, please? Yeah. So, like always, we'll have a brief presentation to understand what asset allocation is all about, and then we'll take it further with the Q&A. राइट. सो एसेट एलोकेशन अगर हम सिंपल तरीके से जानना चाहें तो बचपन से हमने एक बात सुनी है घर में, बैलेंस डाइट की. राइट. हमेशा हमारे पेरेंट्स जब हमको सिखाते हैं अच्छी तरह से खाना तो हमेशा बैलेंस डाइट की बात होती है. तो इन्वेस्टमेंट में एसेट एलोकेशन कुछ उसी तरह से आप देख सकते हैं कि बहुत सारी चीज़ें होती हैं जिनमें आप इन्वेस्ट कर सकते हैं, बट उसमें आप बैलेंस कैसे करेंगे. सो एसेट एलोकेशन इज दैट कॉन्सेप्ट. It is a strategy which balances risk and return in your investment portfolio. और आपके जो इन्वेस्टमेंट इंस्ट्रूमेंट्स हैं, एसेट क्लासेस हैं, उनमें आप अपना सारा पैसा डिवाइड किस तरीके से करें. लाइक आपके पास स्टॉक्स का ऑप्शन होता है, आप बॉन्ड्स खरीद सकते हैं, आप पैसा कैश में रख सकते हैं. कैश इज इक्विवेलेंट टू मनी इन द सेविंग्स अकाउंट, राइट. सो इनमें आप कैसे डिवाइड करें. सो द स्ट्रैटेजी यूज्ड, द कॉन्सेप्ट इज नोन एज एसेट एलोकेशन. अब जैसे हमने बैलेंस डाइट की बात की, तो जैसे हम फूड में कार्बोहाइड्रेट्स, प्रोटीन्स, फैट, इस तरह से जो डिवीजन होता है, जो एसेट जो फूड क्लासेस होते हैं, उसी तरह से एसेट क्लासेस जो इन्वेस्टमेंट में होते हैं, ये ब्रॉडली 5 एसेट क्लासेस में हम इन्वेस्ट करते हैं. दे आर डेट, इक्विटी, रियल एस्टेट, कमोडिटीज एंड ऑल्टरनेट्स. तो डेट और इक्विटी तो सभी लोग जानते हैं, काफ़ी कॉमन चीज़ें हैं. डेट में आप जैसे जो फिक्स्ड इनकम इंस्ट्रूमेंट्स होते हैं जिनका एक फिक्स रेट ऑफ रिटर्न होता है और आपको पता है आपका पैसा कब आना है. देयर इज अ फाइनाइट डेट, मैच्योरिटी डेट टू दैट इंस्ट्रूमेंट. से फॉर एग्जांपल अ फिक्स्ड डिपॉजिट or a PPF account. So all those things come into your debt investment. Even your company's provident fund or the NPS, the national pension system that you're investing in, that will also have components of debt. Equity is इन्वेस्टिंग इन स्टॉक्स बेसिकली. इस पे हम एक मतलब दोनों डेट और इक्विटी पे हम सेशंस कर चुके हैं पहले. यू कैन गो बैक एंड यू नो हैव अ लुक एट दोज सेशंस एज वेल. So equity you can buy either directly or you can go through the mutual fund route, through the equity funds or through the hybrid funds which have equity in them. Real estate is a favorite asset class of Indians. So real estate तो हम सब समझते हैं कि आप प्रॉपर्टी में इन्वेस्ट कर रहे हैं, be it residential property, commercial property, it could be land investment, so various kind of things within real estate. एक नई चीज आई है रियल एस्टेट में, विच इज नोन एज रियल एस्टेट इन्वेस्टमेंट ट्रस्ट, विच इज अ फाइनेंशियल वे ऑफ इन्वेस्टिंग इन रियल एस्टेट. इट्स नॉट अ फिजिकल रियल एस्टेट दैट यू ओन, बट यू ओन इट थ्रू अ फाइनेंशियल इंस्ट्रूमेंट नोन एज रीट. कमोडिटीज जो होती हैं, जो कॉमन यूज होता है, हम लोग गोल्ड और सिल्वर में जैसे इन्वेस्टमेंट करते हैं, दैट इज ब्रॉडली व्हाट मोस्ट पीपल गो फॉर कमोडिटीज. दो देयर आर सेवरल अदर कमोडिटीज लाइक ऑयल और देयर आर other commodities like fuel and guar gum, and there are hundreds of things which are available in the commodities basket. But जहाँ हम this level पे discussion कर रहे हैं, gold and silver is the prominent commodity that we talk about. इसमें भी कई तरीके से हम इन्वेस्ट कर सकते हैं. हम फिजिकल गोल्ड लेते हैं, ज्वेलरी बनवाते हैं, वी बाय गोल्ड म्यूचुअल फंड्स, वी बाय sovereign gold bonds, we buy gold ETFs. So there are various ways in which you can invest in these commodities as well. Alternates. ऑल्टरनेट्स में कई चीज़ें आ सकती हैं. इट इज़ नॉट अ वेरी कॉमन इन्वेस्टमेंट. मोस्ट पीपल डू नॉट गो फॉर दिस. दिस इज यूजुअली high net worth or ultra high net worth individuals who invest in these kind of instruments. They could be very different instruments like art or wine or even coins and precious gems and jewelry. So those come under the alternate assets. तो जब हम एसेट एलोकेशन की बात करते हैं, वी हैव टू अंडरस्टैंड हाउ आर वी गोइंग टू डिवाइड द मनी दैट वी हैव और द इन्वेस्टमेंट दैट वी हैव इनटू दीज डिफरेंट कैटेगरीज. Now, what is the trade-off? Why are we talking about, dividing it into all these categories? So there is always a trade-off between risk and return. आप जब भी कोई इन्वेस्टमेंट करते हैं, उसमें कुछ रिस्क होता है जिसकी वजह से आपको किसी तरह का रिटर्न मिलता है. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, लेट्स ट्राई एंड अंडरस्टैंड. बैंक फिक्स डिपॉजिट है. यहाँ आपको पता है कि एक फिक्स रेट ऑफ रिटर्न है, आपको डेट ऑफ मेच्योरिटी भी पता है उसकी, एंड यू नो दैट मनी इज गोइंग टू कम बैक टू यू इन दैट टाइम फ्रेम. अब इसमें रिस्क कहाँ आता है? रिस्क ये होता है कि इफ द बैंक फेल्स, इन द रिसेंट पास्ट वी हैव सीन सर्टेन इंस्टेंसेस वेयर बैंक्स हैव फेल्ड, तो उसमें ये होता है कि आपकी एफडी में आपने जो पैसे डाले हैं वो आपको वापस नहीं मिलेंगे. दो देर इज अ कवरेज फ्रॉम DICGC जो 5 लाख तक का रिस्क कवर प्रोवाइड करता है टू बैंक डिपॉजिटर्स, बट बियॉन्ड दैट ऑल योर मनी इज एट रिस्क. नाउ दैट रिस्क कितना बड़ा रिस्क है, दैट इज योर परसेप्शन कि बैंक नहीं डूबेगा, आपका पैसा आपको वापस मिल जाएगा. So within banks also there are categories of banks where the risks differ. अब दूसरी तरफ आप ले लें equity investment, जैसे stocks में आप invest कर रहे हैं, तो stocks में जो risk होता है, कई अलग अलग तरह के रिस्क होते हैं, लेकिन एक सबसे बड़ा रिस्क है कि स्टॉक इन्वेस्टमेंट काफ़ी वॉलेटाइल होता है. अब वॉलेटिलिटी है और आपके पास उसमें कोई रिटर्न की गारंटी नहीं है, इसीलिए आप ज़्यादा रिस्क ले रहे हैं. जब आप ज़्यादा रिस्क लेते हैं तो आप क्यों लेते हैं? बिकॉज यू आर एक्सपेक्टिंग दैट यू विल गेट अ हायर रिटर्न. अब यहाँ पे आप थोड़ा सा डिफरेंट समझिए कि आप ज़्यादा रिस्क ले रहे हैं इन एंटिसिपेशन दैट यू विल गेट अ हायर रिटर्न, डज नॉट मीन दैट बिकॉज यू आर टेकिंग हायर रिस्क यू विल गेट हायर रिटर्न. मतलब इसकी कोई गारंटी नहीं है कि आप रिस्क ले रहे हैं इस वजह से आपको रिटर्न मिलेगा. तो इन सब एसेट क्लासेस में जब आप इन्वेस्ट करते हैं, हर एक एसेट क्लास का अपना एक रिस्क रिटर्न पैरामीटर होता है. तो आप अलग अलग रिक्वायरमेंट्स के लिए अलग अलग एसेट क्लास को चुनिए या एक कॉम्बिनेशन इस तरह से बनाइए कि आप कम रिस्क पे ज़्यादा रिटर्न पा सकें, या सेम लेवल ऑफ रिस्क के लिए आप मतलब कितना ज़्यादा रिटर्न अर्न कर सकते हैं. सो दैट इज ऑलवेज अ ट्रेड ऑफ बिटवीन व्हाट यू सिलेक्ट अमंग्स द बास्केट ऑफ इन्वेस्टमेंट्स दैट इज अवेलेबल टू यू. अब जब हम रिस्क की बात करते हैं, दो तरह के रिस्क होते हैं, पीपल यूजुअली कंफ्यूज बिटवीन दीज टू टाइप ऑफ रिस्क. सो वन इज द इन्वेस्टर रिस्क, मतलब आप एज एन इन्वेस्टर आपके अपने पर्सनल रिस्क टॉलरेंस क्या है, आपकी ज़रूरतें किस तरह की हैं. इफ योर गोल्स आर प्रिटी लार्ज, you might not be comfortable, you might not be okay with taking a lower risk product like a bank fixed deposit which will give you a lower return because आपकी ज़रूरतें बहुत ज़्यादा हैं, you need to grow your money to that extent. But if you take a higher risk product, will you be comfortable doing that? Because if you're not comfortable taking that risk, it's not. इट ऑल्सो डिपेंड्स ऑन योर इन्वेस्टमेंट होराइजन. जैसे हम गोल्स की जब बात करते हैं, जैसे लॉन्ग टर्म गोल्स है, रिटायरमेंट के हुए या बच्चों की हायर एजुकेशन के हुए, दीज आर वेरी लॉन्ग टर्म गोल्स. सो यूजुअली दैट इज वेयर यू कैन अफोर्ड टू टेक हायर रिस्क. सो दैट इज योर पर्सनल सिचुएशन, वी विल कॉल दैट एज इन्वेस्टर रिस्क. दूसरी तरफ होता है प्रोडक्ट रिस्क. तो जब आप कोई भी प्रोडक्ट चुनते हैं, बी इट फ्रॉम द डेट पोर्टफोलियो और बी इट फ्रॉम एन इक्विटी पोर्टफोलियो और इवन अ रियल एस्टेट प्रोडक्ट फॉर दैट मैटर, आप जब लैंड खरीदते हैं या कोई रेजिडेंशियल प्रॉपर्टी खरीदते हैं, तो आपको हर एक प्रोडक्ट को 3 पैरामीटर्स पे चूज करना चाहिए. एक सेफ्टी, लिक्विडिटी एंड रिटर्न. तो सेफ्टी इन टर्म्स ऑफ वेदर इट इज प्रोडक्ट विच इज लीगल, इज देयर अ रेगुलेटर, अगर कुछ गड़बड़ हो गई, कोई रूल्स रेगुलेशंस हैं, इज समबडी ओवरसीइंग दैट. सो दैट इज वन पार्ट ऑफ सेफ्टी. The second part of safety is, as we spoke about, the risk of the product. कि product volatile है या मतलब क्या रिस्क है उसमें इस तरह से inherently. जैसे stocks हैं, stocks में basically आप companies में invest कर रहे हैं, so whether that company's business will do well in the future, so that is the risk factor. So what you feel about that, and when you read the numbers, when you read the balance sheets of the companies, you'll be able to figure that out. Second is the liquidity parameter, where यू नीड टू सी दैट आपको जब पैसे की जरूरत है उस टाइम को आपको पैसा मिलेगा या नहीं. आप अगर किसी ऐसे प्रोडक्ट में पैसा डाल रहे हैं जिसमें कोई लॉक इन है, जैसे पीपीएफ का एग्जांपल ले लीजिए. आप पीपीएफ एक 15 साल का प्रोडक्ट है, इसमें लिक्विडिटी होती है लेकिन वो 7 साल के बाद आती है. So if you need that money within that 7-year time frame, you cannot choose PPF. You will need to choose something which is more in line with your requirements, कि जब आपको पैसे की जरूरत हो तब आपके हाथ में पैसा आना चाहिए. And then you come to the return part of it, कि हर एक प्रोडक्ट में किस तरह का रिटर्न है. So a mixture of these three will give you the total product risk that is there. So आप investor risk और product risk ये दोनों जानिए, and then you will be able to select the products. अब ये बात हमने समझ ली कि क्या क्या कंपोनेंट्स होते हैं एसेट एलोकेशन के, कंपोनेंट्स में रिस्क क्या होता है, हाउ डू यू लुक एट दैट वीजा वी द रिटर्न. अब आप एसेट एलोकेशन जब करने जाते हैं, जब एक्चुअली आप करते हैं तो किस तरह से करते हैं. ये दो तरह के होते हैं, एक होता है स्ट्रैटेजिक एसेट एलोकेशन और एक होता है टैक्टिकल. तो स्ट्रैटेजिक जो होता है ये आपका कोर होता है, ये आप लॉन्ग टर्म गोल्स के लिए जो अपना पोर्टफोलियो बनाते हैं उसमें आप स्ट्रैटेजिक एसेट एलोकेशन करेंगे. जैसे आपने, मैं एक सिंपल एग्जांपल देती हूँ, 60% इन ग्रोथ एसेट्स एंड 40% इन डिफेंसिव एसेट्स. तो ग्रोथ एसेट्स आर से इक्विटी और रियल एस्टेट. Defensive assets are debt funds. They are other debt products like PPF or even your bank fixed deposits. So all those come into defensive assets, जिनमें growth के chances कम हैं, but उसमें risk और volatility भी काफी कम हो जाती है. So that becomes your core asset allocation. अब कुछ पैसा है जो आप ऐसे situations के लिए रखें जब situations ऐसी arise होती हैं कि when you invest at that particular point in time, there is a higher probability of you earning a better return. फॉर एग्जाम्पल मार्केट क्रैश होता है, जैसे 2020 में हुआ कोविड के टाइम. तो उस टाइम पे अगर आपने इक्विटी में इन्वेस्ट किया होता, सो योर चांसेस ऑफ मेकिंग अ बेटर रिटर्न इज मच हायर. बट उस टाइम पे अगर आपके हाथ में पैसा नहीं है, इफ यू डोंट हैव एलोकेशन टू द कैश कंपोनेंट in your overall asset allocation, then you will not be able to take benefit of that particular situation. So that way you should keep some allocation to cash where you can move it tactically when required into the asset class where you feel you will earn a better return. So ये दो चीजें हैं, इनका मिक्सचर बना के आप अपना टोटल एसेट एलोकेशन कर सकते हैं. अब इसमें एसेट एलोकेशन आपने बना लिया, अब इसके बाद क्या. अब हर साल जब आप अपना प्लान रिव्यू करते हैं, पोर्टफोलियो रिव्यू करते हैं, उस टाइम पे आप देखेंगे कि कई बार जैसे मार्केट बहुत अच्छा परफॉर्म कर रहा है, इक्विटी इज गोइंग वेरी हाई. सो आपने जो ये 60-40 वाला जो क्राइटेरिया लिया था पिछले स्लाइड में जो मैंने बताया, दैट 60% माइट हैव गॉन टू 80%. तो आपका प्रॉफिट उसमें ज़्यादा हो गया है, तो आपका जो एसेट एलोकेशन है वो थोड़ा लॉपसाइडेड हो गया है. तो उस टाइम आपको रीबैलेंस करना चाहिए, बिकॉज यू विल बी सेलिंग एट अ वेरी हाई पॉइंट इन द इक्विटी मार्केट and putting that money into debt. So that is known as rebalancing, कि आप फिर से उसको 60-40 पे ले आइए. So आप पहले जब आप एसेट एलोकेशन क्रिएट करते हैं उसी टाइम पे आप रीबैलेंसिंग क्राइटेरिया सेट कर दीजिए कि when it goes to say 70 or 80%, अगर 10% beyond what we have set, if that goes there, we will rebalance. So that rebalancing criteria is in place. तो जब भी आप अपना पोर्टफोलियो रिव्यू करेंगे, you evaluate कि आपका एसेट एलोकेशन कहाँ पहुंचा है and does it need any rebalancing. और रीबैलेंसिंग जब आप करेंगे तब आप मतलब उसको डिसाइड करेंगे कि आपने जो क्राइटेरिया सेटअप किया है उसके हिसाब से ज़रूरत है, देन यू विल इम्प्लीमेंट द चेंजेस. अब इसमें प्रैक्टिकली जो बेनिफिट्स होते हैं एसेट एलोकेशन के, एक तो आप रिस्क मिटिगेट कर रहे हैं. सी व्हाट हैपेंस, जैसे मैंने 60-40 का बताया कि अगर इक्विटी 60 से 80 पे चला गया है, सो द चांस दैट इट माइट द इक्विटी मार्केट माइट फॉल आर हायर देन the chance of it going up, right? So what you have made as profit might turn into a loss at some point in time. So when you are rebalancing in an asset allocation, you are booking your profits. So you are reducing your risk in one way. So it is a vast subject actually, it's very difficult to explain it in a 15-minute webinar, but I'm just giving you the basic concept of how it is done. So because you are withdrawing when the asset class has created certain profit for you, you are mitigating your risk. Also, because each asset class has a different risk return parameter, you are reducing the overall portfolio risk, because हर एक टाइम पे एक asset class काम नहीं करता है. So there are different time periods when different things will work, and there will always be something in your portfolio which is not working. So that means you have a good mix of assets in your portfolio. So by creating this asset allocation, you are mitigating your risk, यू ऑप्टिमाइजिंग योर रिटर्न, कि एक पर्टिकुलर रिस्क लेवल पे आप किस तरह से मैक्सिमम रिटर्न पा सकते हैं. If you try to increase your return, your risk might also increase. So by creating an asset allocation which is suited to your particular situation, you're also optimizing your returns and you're enhancing the stability of your portfolio. Because if you have only one kind of asset in your portfolio, the portfolio might be very volatile. अगर आप पूरा पूरा equity में डाल देंगे, तो when the equity markets move, obviously your portfolio will go up and down. But if you have something to balance it out, if you have debt allocation or if you have gold, so there will be a balance in that portfolio, and it is likely that you will go towards your goal in a more stable manner. So जब stability होती है, then you are also at peace that your wealth is growing. You will not panic when there is a fall in any one of the markets where you have invested. This way you will be able to create wealth in a very good way. यहाँ पे ये एक समझना ज़रूरी है, जब हम रीबैलेंसिंग करते हैं तो उसमें काफ़ी प्रैक्टिकल इश्यूज भी देखने पड़ते हैं. दो थियोरेटिकली इट इज़ वेरी इजी टू से कि आप 80 से 60 पे ले आइए, बट देयर विल बी कॉस्ट इन्वॉल्व, बिकॉज आप जब भी कोई चीज़ विड्रॉ करते हैं आपको टैक्सेस पे करने होते हैं. इफ देर इज अ टाइम लिमिट, फॉर एग्जाम्पल कई म्यूचुअल फंड्स में 1 ईयर पे एग्जिट लोड होता है. तो अगर आपको ज़रूरत है कि 1 ईयर के पहले आप पैसा निकाल रहे हैं, यू माइट एंड अप पेइंग सम एग्जिट लोड. So while rebalancing, you also have to be mindful of the costs associated. So you have to work in tandem with what you have strategized, कि आपने किस तरह से आपने criteria set किया था कि इस time पे हम rebalance करेंगे, and also the cost associated with that rebalancing activity. So इस तरह से आप अगर देखेंगे, you will be able to create a very good portfolio for yourself. So that's all from my side. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. As always, a very comprehensive presentation, Kiran. I have a few questions, and then, of course, we will open the floor for everyone who has logged in to ask us and send us questions, please, and we will take them shortly. किरण, सबसे पहला सवाल तो यही आता है कि क्या एसेट एलोकेशन को हम एज ब्रैकेट से भी जोड़ के देख सकते हैं कि अगर मैं 20 से 30 के बीच में हूँ, 30 से 40 के बीच में हूँ, तो क्या मेरा एसेट एलोकेशन कुछ डिफरेंट तरीके से हो सकता है, और ये कैसे स्पेसिफिक लाइफ गोल्स से मैच कर सकता है, अगर उसके बारे में we can give some anecdotal or practical example to the ones who have logged in.
Sure, Mugdha. So, as I said, ये strategic allocation की जो हमने बात की थी, so that is linked to actually your age, to your particular life goals. Let us take an example of somebody who's in the early part of their career, say 20 to 30-year-olds. So उस time जो होते हैं सारे goals, long-term goals are pretty far away. If you talk about retirement, children's education, those are pretty far away. The closer goals would probably be, buying a house or buying a vehicle, or their own marriage if they're going to spend for it. So when you link these goals and the time frame with the kind of assets that you're going to invest in, there will be certain assets which you will earmark for your short-term goals, which are going to be in debt, because you can't take a short-term risk with equity, and the long-term goals will be more into equity. So when you create that balance, in the earlier part of your career, when you're younger, you will have more equity. And as you progress towards retirement, as you have created your wealth, in order to protect that wealth that you've created, you will reduce the risk in your portfolio. So that is the way things progress. Also, if we look at the other end, I spoke about the younger age. If we talk about somebody who's senior in their career or who's closer to retirement, you've already created your wealth. You have earned over a full lifetime of your earning career. You're sitting on a good pot of money at that point of time. So you cannot afford to lose sight of protecting that wealth. So in that term, you will be a little more defensive in your portfolio creation. So the asset allocation is likely to be more towards the defensive assets rather than the growth assets. So that is how it moves over a period of time.
A lot of times people talk about rule of 100. Is there anything called the rule of 100? What is this rule of 100? Because when people Google and they find these things, they think that everything that is being spoken about can be applicable on them, but sometimes it isn't. So first of all, what is the rule of 100? If you could explain, and should one follow these rules?
Okay, so yeah, it's very interesting. So the rule of 100 is a thumb rule which people use to create a rough asset allocation for themselves. So what the rule says is, 100 minus your age is your allocation to equity. So basically growth
That
assets.
also
So if somebody is 30, so somebody is 30, say 100 minus 30, so 70% in equity. So that more or less goes in line with what, which I said earlier, you know, so the younger you are, the more you can look at equity. But you need to understand that this is a thumb rule. You know, you need not 100% go by this. So this is just giving you a rough idea of how things can go. Uh, Now, if you look at your particular situation, you might be different. You know, you might not fit into the standard more where this 100 thumb rule will apply. So somebody who is say 30 but has no liabilities, has no dependencies in the family, and is a high risk taker can probably go much more than 70 into equity, right? Likewise, as I
Right.
said, progress in age and you know you're closer to retirement or a senior citizen. Traditionally, say somebody who's 70 years old, you will say 100 minus 70, so 30% in equity and 70% in debt. So if that person already has a you know few crores worth of investments, the 30% of that few crores is going to be a huge amount. So do they really need to keep that much? You know, in
Right.
70% will be huge. So 70% in debt will be huge. So again, based on your particular situation, you might not need that 100 the rule of 100. You know, you will have to look at your situation and modify accordingly. But it's a very very good rule to start with if you don't understand things.
Mm. Although our audience usually is very young, so we concentrate on those things. But we also have some women and of course men also who are uh, towards the later side of say 50s or 60s, and a lot of them ask us कि जब हम asset allocation इस एज ग्रुप में देख रहे हैं तो क्या हमको अपने रियल एस्टेट को कंसोलिडेट करना चाहिए.
Oh, that's a very loaded question. So real estate is a challenging thing actually. So uh, see, when you include real estate, it is a little difficult to rebalance your portfolio. So if you think from an asset allocation view, रियल एस्टेट एक तो आपको प्राइसेस सही पता नहीं होता है टिल यू गो टू सेल यू डोंट रियली नो व्हाट द वर्थ इज तो आप कितना
Correct.
वैल्यू लोगे उसका दैट इज वन बिग चैलेंज व्हेन यू इंक्लूड रियल एस्टेट second if there is a need to rebalance because usually real estate is considered as a growth asset because the rate of return is more or less in line with equity but there are other
Hmm.
issues like illiquidity and other things so that is the reason we keep it separate all the time so when you're trying to consolidate one is the valuation becomes difficult second is how you're going to rebalance so you can't sell like three
Okay.
bedroom का है तो one bedroom तो नहीं sell कर सकते. You'll have to sell the entire thing
Correct.
and then rebalancing.
True
So
that.
it becomes a little
Yeah,
difficult from that point of view. But yes, at
got
certain
it.
points of time, you will have to you know think whether you really need that real estate in your portfolio or would it be better for you to liquidate and move it to financial assets because with age it becomes difficult to manage real estate and rebalance of course and removing things in piecemeal because as you age you will gradually need to dip into what you've created over your lifetime so it becomes easier with financial assets as compared to real estate so it depends on what your outlook is and what your particular situation is.
Got it. Um, when we talk about tax implications, how asset allocation and putting your money in different tools and distributing your assets accordingly help in tax planning as well, then?
Well, it does not directly help you in tax planning, but it makes your
Mhm.
portfolio more tax efficient. You know, if you are aware of certain things, like when we are trying to match your goals. So if your goals are, say, 20 years away, you would not want to put it into something which is, where you need to pay tax every year. You'd rather defer the taxation to a product which will tax you only when you withdraw right? So in that manner, you can create asset allocation taxation efficiency also. Also on part of withdrawal, you know, where we had discussed on the systematic withdrawal plan at some
Yeah,
point in time.
yeah.
So that is a very tax efficient way. So when you have certain assets in, say, debt, and you're withdrawing from there for a monthly income. So in an overall asset allocation portfolio, there will be certain income generating assets as well. So SWP in a way will make it more tax efficient. You know, so within asset allocation, you can create these buckets where efficiencies are built up. So there is no actual direct tax benefit. It's only deferment and efficiency of taxation.
Got it. We can start taking a few questions now, and the floor is open to everyone who wants to know a little more about asset allocation, perhaps. All right. Does asset allocation preferences differ from various regions of the country as well? Like, for example, tier one city versus tier three city? Or, Tanya has an interesting question.
Tanya, I really don't know what to say to this. I think will have to be answered by a research survey whether it's actually any different. Uh, it actually
because,
should
yeah,
not.
financial
Yeah,
tools will be the same throughout the country.
exactly.
Yeah.
So the preferences might differ based on what your beliefs are, and it could be different from different cities or region to region also. Like typically, we understand that most Indians like real estate, most Indians like gold. South has more liking towards gold, North has more towards real estate. So those are anecdotal evidences. Otherwise, if we come to think of it, how you should think of asset allocation should not differ from the area that you really stay in, or which part of the country you belong to.
I'm guessing, yeah, I'm guessing maybe the geography is important. If you really think that a part of your asset should be in real estate, then of course you are looking at geographies that are likely to give you more amount when as a return of investment versus something which is already a saturated market. So maybe from that point of view, but other than that, I don't really think it
Yeah, so
should.
preferences not really. We can't really comment on that. But yeah, from geographical diversification, yes. So why India only? We can also look at asset allocation in international. That is also a diversification
Right.
strategy. So within
Oh
equity also
yes,
now you can purchase stocks
yeah,
from various other
yeah.
markets as well. You can send money abroad and buy property there as well. So international diversification also is a part of asset allocation within those asset classes that we mentioned.
All right. Muskan Chopra is asking, how often should I review and rebalance my asset allocation and what factors should be considered in this process? Good question. Yeah.
Yeah, Muskan, so see, typically you should actually look at your portfolio at least once a year. That is your review. But rebalancing need not essentially happen every year. You will, as I said, need to look at a realistic kind of setup where you will not very frequently rebalance, because that will involve costs. So every time you try and rebalance, there'll be a cost associated to it. So probably every 2 to 3 years, or unless there is like a huge jump. So in certain periods, where the markets really run up very fast, if you have a lot of equity in your portfolio, your asset allocation, I mean, the balance will totally go haywire. So in that scenario, yes, you can rebalance earlier, but typically we do not suggest rebalancing at a very frequent interval because of the cost associated with it. And also you disturb the compounding in a certain way. So if there is a compounding happening in those returns, you are disturbing that by constantly rebalancing. What should be the factors considered? One, how haywire it has gone. I mean, if it has gone from 60 to 90, obviously you need to kind of, rebalance. Uh, Whether you really need to be very,
Or
very
if the
strict
market
about
falls.
if the market falls. Yeah, so it's the other way around. So the other asset will go very high and the equity will
Yes.
fall. So if it's gone
True.
to 60 to
Yeah.
90, or if it's fallen from 60 to 30, either way. So you can rebalance looking at that way.
Hmm. All right, we have our next question from Vaishali. How can beginners approach diversification in their investment portfolio? हाँ, ये बड़ा इंटरेस्टिंग सवाल हो जाता है क्योंकि पहले जब वो अपनी शुरुआत कर रहे होते हैं और उनको लगता है अच्छा ठीक है हम एसआईपी से शुरुआत कर लें और ये कर लें और फिर एकदम से ये लगता है कि अच्छा अब एसेट एलोकेशन भी करना है. So yeah, how to gradually start it?
So Vaishali, this is a very interesting question. See, I think the better way to look at it is to look at your goals. Like I've always, said that the goals are the beginning point of why you are investing. So until you know that, it will be a little difficult for you to really create your portfolio. So asset allocation on a broad level, yes. When we talk about something like 60-40 or 80-20 at a younger age, that 80-20, the 20% can include your EPF that is being deducted as an employee. So that is also going towards that. Your emergency funds can come in that whatever 20-30% that you're keeping in debt, and the rest of it can go into equity and commodities like gold. Some can go to international investment. So start gradually. Don't look at it in a 1 or 2 year time frame. As your income increases, you will gradually be able to diversify. So start simple. If you try to put too many things at the same time, you will be overwhelmed and you might not be able to make that beginning. So start gradually. Whatever you can save and invest. Uh, Look at your emergency funding first. That will be your debt investment. Then look at your equity investment for your medium to long term goals. And then gradually, as the capacity to invest increases or as your corpus increases because you've been investing for a few years, you can further diversify into other asset classes as well.
Great. Let's take the next question. Priya is asking, can you provide insights into identifying enduring investment opportunities for lasting prosperity? ये तो मुझे भी पता करना है प्रिया.
आ जाइए, आप client बन जाइए. You will get to know that. See, this is actually a very it's a detailed working. So you can't just say that one thing is going to work forever. So you have to first create a plan कि आप क्या कर रहे हैं, क्यों कर रहे हैं, कितने टाइम तक करना चाहते हैं, and then when do you change that, so lasting prosperity and enduring portfolios are created only when you start right and then you keep on reviewing and monitoring every year. So that is a longer process. It cannot be a one-time thing that is done. So I would suggest you go to an advisor and figure out things for your particular situation and get going on that.
Yeah. Although one has to say that everyone is very bullish on the Indian markets doing well, और हम काफी अरसे बाद बहुत अच्छा कर रहे हैं. तो इस टाइम पे जो भी इस नेशन बिल्डिंग और बिजनेस बिल्डिंग और अपनी वेल्थ बिल्डिंग एक्सरसाइज में पार्टिसिपेट नहीं कर रहा है, तो उसको बार बार कहा जा रहा है that you should participate in it. So maybe that is the lasting prosperity that we can talk about.
Yeah, but markets have a mind of their own. So yeah, let's not. Yeah,
Risk,
we say that.
risk
Yeah, risk
appetite
always
and
is
risk
there.
management,
So
as Kiran
actually,
always says.
yeah, Priya, I always say this that investment is all about managing your risk. So आप gradually अगर simple तरीके से भी wealth create करना चाहें, as long as you're not making big mistakes, you will create good amount of wealth. So कई बारी क्या होता है कि हम distract हो जाते हैं. There are too many get rich quick schemes, or you get lured by what your friends and neighbors are doing and jump into things which are not really suited to your need, or there is something more glittering that comes on the horizon. So the grass is
Yeah.
always greener on the other side. So you kind of lose a track of the path that you've chosen and go to other things, and those mistakes happen, and that's when the wealth destruction happens. So if you do create wealth in a steady manner uh, and avoid those mistakes, you should be able to create wealth for yourself.
I heard something very beautiful the other day, and I think it was, I'm forgetting the name of this actor who was giving this wonderful award receiving speech. And he said, you need commitment to start and you need consistency to finish. And I thought
Absolutely.
that was so good that, you need to first commit to the goal. कि चाहे छोटे से शुरू करें, लेकिन शुरू करें, and then you need the consistency to finish it and take it towards the lasting prosperity bit. So I
Absolutely.
really liked that quote. चलिए last question ले लेते हैं आज का. Shri Lekha Menon is asking, what would be an ideal percentage allocation among various assets out of my monthly salary? Can we sort of give a rough
yeah, रफ वन सी देखिए, मंथली सैलरी के हिसाब से मत कीजिए, ये आप ओवरऑल वेल्थ के हिसाब से कीजिए कि व्हाट शुड बी योर क्राइटेरिया. जैसे मैंने 60-40 की बात की, दैट इज द मोस्ट कॉमन काइंड ऑफ portfolio asset allocation across the world. So 60-40 creates wealth in the long term. That is what has been researched. But obviously things change. The country is also going through a lot of change. So maybe you want I don't know what stage you are in, or what are your goals, how far they are. So based on that, maybe the 60-40 can be tweaked. So as we discussed about that rule of 100, so that could be maybe a starting point for your asset allocation. So within 60-40 में अगर हम equity और debt की बात करते हैं, या growth assets और defensive की बात करते हैं, equity again you can divide it into buying direct stocks, you can go to mutual funds, you can look at some portion, real estate obviously is a big ticket item, so I would suggest you keep that separate. In debt, again, you have to consider your EPF, which you're already indirectly contributing to debt. You would have some FDs in the bank that would be there in defensive. Your bank balances, which you're maintaining, is a defensive asset because that will come to use, whenever there is an opportunity to invest, say in an equity market when there is a crash. Or that could also be your emergency fund. You would have certain recurring deposit, postal investments. All those things are in your debt basket. So broadly, look at what these accumulate to, including your EPF. Don't forget that because that's 12% of your income that is going into that. So based on that, you broadly use the rule of 100 to begin, and if possible, go to an advisor and figure out if this works for you. If you can create a good asset allocation for yourself and stick to it for a longer period of time.
Great. I hope you got answers to all your questions. And of course, we've been providing you information on all of these topics very systematically through the last year or so. So whenever you need that, whenever you want any information handy, you can of course go to all the educational content that we have put there. But when you're taking the plunge, then of course do make sure that you're also consulting a financial advisor. Thank you, Kiran, as always, for being a wonderful expert on the show. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Mukta. Thank you, everyone who's attended.